Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily update for May 17th, 2021. I'd like to catch you up on a few of the developments over the weekend as the events are continuing to occur at a frenzied pace. The mainstream media will not give you the actual story, and it's crucial that the population take responsibility now for not only knowing what's happening, but knowing what to do about it. So let's begin with a couple of key stories. On May 21st, there will be a global health summit in Rome, Italy. This will be taking up how to deal with not just the current pandemic, but prepare for future pandemics. The Schiller Institute is involved in a major intervention to make sure that this is not just a bunch of talk, but actually moves toward a solution, which is to provide a world-class health system in every nation. There's no reason that this can't be done. And in fact, there's every reason that it must be done, as we can see from the tragedy that's unfolding in India, where the attempt or the effort was not made to prepare for the oncoming crisis. What we've called for is making this a global mission to build world-class health facilities everywhere, which includes new hospitals, new labs. It includes training of health care professionals, especially among youth. You can get the statement that we've issued on the Schiller Institute website under the heading, Global Health Security Requires Medical Infrastructure in Every Country. And Helga Zepp-LaRouche has called on all of you to download this statement and circulate it and raise a stink over this, because we're not in a one-time situation with COVID, but dealing with the danger that as you have a breakdown of physical production, a breakdown in nutrition, in healthcare, in hospital capability, that you are setting yourself up for the next pandemic. And in fact, let me remind you, in 1975, Lyndon LaRouche issued a warning that we face the danger of biological holocaust as a result of the policies of the global bankers aiming to reduce the standard of living of the majority of the world's population. Why are they doing this? To increase the death rate, to reduce the world's population. And so we have to provide a mobilization that will give people a sense of hope, where otherwise people are just dealing with disinformation and misinformation and hoping that they'll somehow get through. Of course, the same thing's happening with the war danger and with the financial system, as I'll get to in a moment. Let's take up what happened yesterday at the UN Security Council. The Chinese, who are presiding over the UN Security Council now, had called for a discussion and action to stop the fighting going on in Gaza, the West Bank, and throughout Israel. The numbers of civilians who are dying is increasing dramatically. Yesterday alone, more than 50 Palestinians were killed, including 13 children. The problem is, when the UN Security Council met to discuss this, the U.S., under the Biden administration, continued to stonewall and to say, let things play out a little bit more. Yesterday, Israel blew up a building, a 13-story building, which included within it the headquarters of Associated Press and Al Jazeera, among other press services. Why blow up a building that has the press in it? Well, obviously, to dampen the story, to cut the reporting on what's actually being done. And there is talk, I should say, of war crimes being committed. This should be investigated. Netanyahu has no right to say, we reject a ceasefire because we still have more cleaning up to do. Hamas has said they would accept a ceasefire. The attempt to draft a resolution calling for a ceasefire was undercut by the U.S. presence there. Now, you can look at this as provoked by Israel with the raid of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the eviction of Palestinian settlers in East Jerusalem. But in fact, this has been breeding as a crisis since the last Intifada in 2014. More than 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza, a very small area, which is really an open-air concentration camp. It's very difficult for people to leave. There's little economy. There's whole sections of the population that has running water for maybe 2 hours a day, electricity for 3 or 4 hours a day, and now even that's been cut off. So there has to be an action from the outside. But keep in mind, this is not just about Israel and Palestine. The war continues in Southwest Asia, with the sanctions against Syria, with the civil war against Yemen, with the U.S. military deployed in Iraq and still in Afghanistan. This is a region which has been just devastated going back to 1991 with the original Gulf War under George H.W. Bush, who used the alliance, the so-called alliance of the willing, to proclaim the new world economic order. Well, now we see what it means: death and destruction. And again, the Biden administration is playing a terrible role in this by refusing to put pressure on Israel to accept a ceasefire. Now, we also see the problems with the Biden administration when it comes to the shutdown of the Colonial Pipeline. Look, there's a lot of this which is suspicious. Why, when the business side was attacked, was the pipeline shut down? The so-called hackers, the dark side, apparently shut down their operations when they were hit by a U.S. cyber attack. There are some people who are saying that it could have been done not by the Russians but by the CIA, including Natalia Kaspersky, the former CEO of Kaspersky Labs, who said that in her view, it could have been the CIA that did this. Now, of course, you have Adam Schiff, who never misses an opportunity to blame the Russians, who's piling on again, saying that if the Russian government didn't do it, in other words, if Putin didn't personally order it, he allowed it to happen. And so you have this kind of nonsensical line coming out as part of the overall thrust against Russia, at the same time that they're talking about having a summit between Putin and Biden to start addressing some of these crises. Now, let's take the last story that I want to cover today, which is for those of you who believe that we're really in a red-hot economy, that the economic system is booming, there's improvements across the board. Let me clue you into some facts. The official figure of money printing that fueled this so-called red-hot economy is over $10 trillion in the last 18 months. This is Federal Reserve quantitative easing, the purchasing of government bonds, the purchasing of junk bonds, of mortgage-backed securities, and so on, to flood the economy with liquidity. But liquidity isn't the problem. Solvency is. We have a collapse of corporations because they're not making enough profits to cover the interest on their debt. Now, when you look at this, what's the other effect of a flood of money? Inflation. And the official figures are that we reached 4% inflation last month. Well, it's probably much higher than that. In some cases, in building materials, it's well over 100 to 200% inflation. Look at the price of gasoline. Look at the price of food when you go to the grocery store. If you're on a low income or fixed income, it's impossible to keep up with the costs. Now, a report was put out about the wage levels of productive workers in the United States between April 2020 and April 2021. The wages fell 3.3%. So as inflation is going up, wages are falling. This is the largest decline since the last major inflationary shock occurred in 1980. And the bad news is it's going to get worse. There's a solution. And the solution on the economy is LaRouche's 4 laws. Study it. Go to LaRouchePub.com and type in the search engine LaRouche's 4 laws, and you'll get an explanation of how we can get out of this. This is a proposal that has existed since the time of the 2008 crash. Instead of doing that, they're flooding the economy with money. At the same time, the people doing that are preparing for the Great Reset in which the flow of money to the economy will be cut off completely, and only money will be going into the green economy, and everything else will be cut. That's not a solution, any more than not having a call for a ceasefire is a solution to the situation in Israel right now. So that's the update for today. Join me tomorrow, but in between, do some work, study these issues. Get the Schiller Institute press release on the world-class health system and circulate it. Get your friends and neighbors and coworkers thinking about how to solve problems instead of sitting around complaining. Thanks, and I'll see you again tomorrow.